welcome back. I am so excited to introduce you to my guest today. She is Siri Payne, MED. She is a certified life coach from the Life Coach School. She created her successful life coaching practice while parenting 3 teenagers, teaching special education full-time, supporting her husband in his demanding career, and serving as the president in her church's women's organization. Siri coaches mompreneurs, helping them streamline their homes, business, and schedules to create a life they love with the time and structure to be great mothers and wives while making good money in their business. She teaches how to have both a successful home life and business without sacrificing relationships, sleep, or the things you value most. Hey, Siri, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I think it's so funny that I literally had to disable Siri on my phone to get through this interview.
Yes, that is what most people are finding when we talk on Zoom.
So fun. So let's start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself and your family.
I think you just did a really great job. I'm the mom of 3 teenagers, a wife of a really busy husband that although he is not an entrepreneur, like per se, because he does work for a company, he has an entrepreneurial spirit. And this was where we at now was our 18th move in 16 years. So he's always chasing and creating and has other ideas and growing and working. So like I said, there's a little bit of an element to entrepreneur in his brain for sure.
Well, I love this. And I'm so excited to talk about managing all of this because what you just described is a lot to manage on its own. So we're coming to the end of January, which is classic goal setting. And by the end of the month, many of us, most of us probably have fallen short or given up on our goals completely. I'm so excited to talk to you about goals and decisions. And let's start with, what if I set a goal on January 1st and I've already given up or want to quit?
Well, then you might just be human if that's what you're doing, right?
Right.
But so if you are in that case, what I want you to do is recognize the small wins along the way and really celebrate them to reaching your goal. Because if you wait till the very end to celebrate, that's when we often run out of steam or we try to talk ourselves out of it and think like it's not worth it, it's too hard, all of that good stuff. So when you are setting a goal, and just notice like you can get back on track just because January 1st is some deemed first day of goals. How about February 1st, right? How about January 26th? Like it doesn't really matter. But when you want to set a goal, imagine yourself already achieving the goal. How you imagine how you're going to feel when the goal happens, that's what you want to practice doing now. So just take a few minutes to just really feel on purpose like what it feels like to achieve their goal. And that's when you celebrate those small wins. That's going to allow you to practice feeling how you want to feel. Also, just take the time to evaluate your goals. I think that's really important. Take the time to evaluate the progress that you've made so far. So many times as humans, right, we want to quit before we get the goal achieved. And that's because we didn't think we were making quote unquote enough progress. And so we, again, try to talk ourselves out of the goal. So when you're evaluating the progress towards your goal, consider asking yourself some questions like, what is going well? What are you enjoying about the process? What is harder than you thought, or what it maybe isn't going wrong, or what is going wrong that maybe you can retweak? And what are some strategies that you can try to change those hard, or to change those things that you are unexpected, or those things that you're deeming as maybe going wrong? And what can you do differently next time? Or what can you try differently next time to be more successful towards your goal?
So let's make it a little bit more concrete for people. Let's say I have like an eating regimen goal and I want to eat a certain way and I want to lose a certain amount of weight by a certain date. Tell me how I would take those principles that you just described and kind of celebrate along the way. So I'm not like, I want to lose 15 pounds and now I've given up.
Right. So notice like where you are having small wins may be that you went to your favorite Mexican restaurant and normally you would order like some kind of burrito enchilada plate. And instead you got like a tostada or a taco salad and you didn't eat the shell. That's like a small win. And when you go away, you're like, man, I was able to go and enjoy myself. I enjoyed the restaurant. I enjoyed the company, and I still stayed on track towards my goal. That's just noticing those small wins and not just making it all focused maybe on the scale. Maybe let's say you aren't doing as well as you think you should be. You could say, well, what is going well? Kind of remind yourself of that. And then like, what are you enjoying about the process? and what isn't going well. And let's say you decided a part of this regimen was to work out and you notice you keep missing your workouts. Well, maybe it's not because you're not motivated. Maybe it's just not a great time. And so maybe you thought, I'll work out at night because that just seemed like the best time for you, but you're realizing maybe that's not when you have the energy to do it. So when you evaluate, you can say, hey, I've been missing my workouts, and get curious, like, why? Why do I think it? And you're like, because I'm always, and then you can fill in the blank. And you're like, well, is there another time I could be doing it? Right? Should I try to do it in the afternoon? Should I try to do it in the morning? And play around with that. Another thing is, let's say you said you want to eat a certain way. Well, maybe you're not eating the way you thought that you would. And that's kind of when you can say, what are you enjoying? Well, I'm not enjoying this particular, shake or this particular type of meal. Well, then cut it out and eat something else, right? So like, just notice like what is working for you. When do you notice the scale drop? What are you enjoying eating? Put those things into your life so that you're creating like a goal that you like working towards. And so you're going to like the results and you like the steps that you're doing while getting there.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Like, I don't think you have to make yourself miserable to get to a certain goal effectively. Like, right. I like reorganizing that so that it's actually enjoyable to be working towards the goal, not just I will be happy when I get to the goal. I love that.
Right. It's being happy all the way there. Or else what happens is we get the goal and then we revert back and then we don't keep that progress, whatever that was, because we didn't enjoy the process.
Yeah. Oh, such a good point. Okay. So how can we overcome that feeling that we've already failed on our goals? So like if I'm sitting here listening and I'm like, ugh, it's too late already. How can I overcome that and be like, okay, jump back on that horse?
Right. Well, it's never too late, right? Because we have our whole life ahead of us. So do you want to be wishing next year, oh, I should have done that last year, right? So just start January, February, March, who cares? But remind yourself that you're human and not succeeding or having to keep trying is part of the human experience, right? So as long as you're willing to keep trying, then you aren't failing. So, right, like maybe you did have like this Mexican dinner excursion and you went over and you ate and you ate things that hopefully you were considering not to have. And guess what? The next time you go, or just even the next meal, just try again, try differently. And I even like to say we're either winning or learning rather than failing. So if you know at the beginning it's kind of hard to visit this particular restaurant, maybe don't go there for a little bit. Yes, we want to learn how to eat there and enjoy it as part of our life, but maybe at the beginning you just decide, I'm not going to visit these places where I notice I'm failing a lot, or we're learning, right? Not failing. But when we take the time again to evaluate, like I mentioned above, that's when our learning becomes our path to success. And that's when it becomes revealed. If we're evaluating what's going well and what's not, that's how we decide what actions we're going to continue to take to then hit our goal. I also believe that we grow from the times when things don't turn out as we expected or as perfectly as we hoped. Because then that's because when we learn and we adjust, we do things differently, we make different plans and strategies. And then that's when we then become that person that we want to be, that is hitting that goal very consistently. And also just remind ourselves, I like to say humans make mistakes. And so that's what erasers, I'm sorries, do-overs, 3 strikes, and second chances are for.
So good. I love that. And I think that the year 2020 taught us that when things don't go our way, it's not the end of the world. Like the world doesn't end. We just try again.
Yeah. And we recalibrate and we redo. I worked with a lot of moms that are mompreneurs because that's what I do. And they also then had kids at home. And so we tried something one week and we noticed, okay, these things are working, these things are not. So be willing to like keep a curious open mind and be like, hey, what is working? Let's keep doing that. And let's change these little things. It doesn't mean we failed. It just means we're learning how to do something new.
Yeah, I love it. So good. Okay, so here's a big thing that I've noticed because many of us don't set goals because it requires making decisions. And the idea of failing stops us in our tracks. Like, oh, if I make a decision and then I fail at it, then all is lost, right? So how do you encourage people to make decisions and not be afraid to just try it? Like not be afraid of that huge idea that like maybe that was the wrong decision or something.
So I think, of course, I've touched on this a little bit above, and just remembering that making mistakes is part of the path to reaching our goal because that's where we learn. But when just focusing on decision making, I like to help people and remind them that don't believe that there's a more correct decision or choice. Because in reality, we'll never really be able to know which one was the correct choice because you can't play both of them out to the end. So you won't ever get to see the end of both of them. So just don't believe that there's a more correct choice, right? There's just the next choice towards your path because you can always course correct and readjust. I like to remind people to trust themselves. I believe we have the intuition and this faith given to us for a reason. So even if you can't trust yourself in like all of the parts of the decision, just stay focused on the one thing that you can trust now, right? Can you trust that you will keep going? Can you trust that you will figure it out, right? Can you trust that you're going to do what it takes to make it happen? So if there are parts that you are doubting, just ask yourself, what can you trust right now? And just stay focused on that one little tiny thing as you're figuring and working it out. Another thing I like to encourage my clients to do is just to make decisions quickly with the information that you have available. We're always going to wait for more information or this or that. Just whatever you know at the time, just make the decision, because the longer you wait, you're really wasting time towards making that thing happen or towards that goal. And then finally, once you've made that really powerful decision, put all your effort into making that decision the best decision instead of spending time second guessing and doubting. Right? Because there's a great example. I'm working with a client and she's in the middle of planning a retreat, and we're on this Marco Polo group with a couple of other people that are helping her plan. And she's like, okay, guys, if we don't get enough people, then we can just still go to the Airbnb and we'll just do a working weekend. And I got on, I'm like, no plan B, right? If you're spending time figuring out what you could do instead, I said, then you're not spending the time to make the goal happen, to make the sales in this retreat work. And so just sometimes I just like to remind people, if you're having plan B, you're doubting your plan A, and then you're obviously not making plan A work because you're spending time in plan B.
So I love this idea of having your own back, like make a decision quickly and then spend your energy making it a good decision. So, reinforcing that decision. Like you said, if there's a plan B, you're second guessing, then you're not spending the appropriate amount of energy backing yourself up on the decision.
Right. Like I like to remind people about this, like in relation to marriage, since that's what we're talking about. It's like when you marry this guy, he's your plan A. Are you like standing there on your wedding day being like, well, if he doesn't work out, I could still marry my high school boyfriend, or I could still marry that guy down the street. Right. And so what if you make your energy all into that decision, then your whole life can be an incredible marriage, even when it gets hard, because you're like, no, this is the decision for me. And I know sometimes it doesn't always work out the way we thought, but then not even question that decision. Then it's like there were things that you learned, things that you grow. Maybe babies came from a regard, from that marriage or whatever. And so maybe it wasn't the wrong decision. It was the decision at the time that was necessary. And then of course there's another decision, which is maybe to end the marriage. Hopefully, that's not what we're talking about, and then get a new marriage. And maybe that is then the next decision. But even questioning it when it doesn't work out isn't helpful either.
Yeah, I love that analogy so much. So making the initial decision quickly, talk about that for just a second, because I know that some people can get so caught in this, decision paralysis, like analysis paralysis. What do I do? I need more information. How can we kind of bypass all of that?
When you notice that you're in that, most likely there's a lot of fear attached. And so I like to tell people, don't make decisions based off of fear or the possibility of what might happen, right? Just make the decision that feels right to you because you want to, right? And when you start to analyze the decision or what it can do down the road or other people, then you're really into fear. And so what feels good to you, what feels like something you want to do, and just make that decision. And then, as you said, we will then spend our time making it the right decision because we'll be looking for evidence that it's working.
Yeah, that's such the underpinnings of a lot of my marriage teachings that I teach. It's like, it's exactly what you just described. So one of my favorite things that you talk about is avoiding decision fatigue, especially as wives and moms and business owners. We have tons of decisions to make all the time. I'd love for you to give us some of your best tips for avoiding decision overload.
So I think a lot of that is just automate as many decisions as you can. So with me being that organizational streamlining type coach, it's like just get as many decisions off your plate, like limit the amount of meals that you make at dinner time, or just do a rotation, or write 30 down and do the same 30 all the time, right? Just making sure like, hey, laundry's are on Tuesday or whatever. It doesn't matter if you want to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, you just make a decision. Then if you decide Tuesday, Thursday and it's a Wednesday, you're like, oh, should I do laundry? No, like you do laundry on Tuesday and Thursday. So as many things as you can automate in your life, carpools, just wake up times, like don't decide when you're going to wake up and then don't teeter. Like we can literally spend 5 minutes a night going, should I wake up at 6 or 6:15? If I did this, if I brushed my teeth, if I did, just make a decision and then just don't go back on it, because we waste a lot of time in those little things. And then we have made so many decisions that by like 10 o'clock in the morning, that there's none left to make. And then our decisions go downhill from there because we're tired and we're sick of making decisions.
Yeah, I love it. I think decision fatigue is a real thing. And I do think that there's so many decisions we can automate as moms. Like we don't have to just keep remaking them. We make them once and then we just go with that for a while. And and just like kind of goals, we can reevaluate it later down the road. And if it's not working, we can change it. Like it's totally fine, but try to wake up at the same time every morning so that you don't have to keep remaking that decision every night. I love it. Okay. So I'm super excited for the answer to this question from you, because you do have so many things that you juggle and you are so streamliney. But how have you been able to juggle the responsibilities of marriage, motherhood, and your coaching business?
I really believe it's knowing and defining the results ahead of time for like my marriage, my motherhood, and my business. That's what the key is. So asking myself, and you guys can do the same thing, like, what do I want from each of these roles? Like, how do I want them to look? How do I want them to feel and fulfill me, right? How do I want to show up in each role? So when we know the answers, that then allows me to really be able to keep track to create the marriage and the business that I desire. So we often feel like that we are lacking something or like something isn't enough. But if we don't know what we're aiming for, like if we don't know what that result is, then we are going to always lack and not have enough, and we're going to fail every time. I like to use a story, kind of like an analogy of going into a target room. And let's say you're going there and you're maybe shooting guns. I like to pretend like the targets are all over the wall, right? So it's not just like one line. And so they give you the directions. They just say, there are some special targets here. Some of them are amazing. Some of them are extra points. Some of them are really great. And then the rest are just like the targets. So you spend all day in this target room and you're shooting and you're learning new things and you're growing and you're adapting and you're hitting targets, right? And you feel like you're just doing a great job. And then at the end of the day, you're like, did I win? Did I hit the magic targets? And then they're like, I am so sorry. The person that knows the magic targets left for the day, right? Notice how unfulfilled you are, right? You don't know if you hit the right targets. You don't know if all of your work was like purposeful and if you were working towards what you need to do. And so that's like it is with our results of our marriage and our business and just any goals, anything that we're trying to work on. If we don't know the targets, then we're always going to feel like we're not doing enough, or we're going to feel like we lack in some area. It's really defeating not to know our targets, and it's really unsatisfying. So I encourage you, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I feel like this is going full circle, because your targets or your goals are really important to have in mind. Like, you don't necessarily have to judge your success by whether or not you hit the goal in a certain time frame. It's just knowing what you're aiming for is so important. So setting these goals becomes then very important, and then being able to evaluate, like you said, and not getting stuck in the result, but more in the journey towards the goal.
Right. And also just kind of staying focused on which ones are the impactful ones, right? So, because all of those targets on the wall, only like 4 of them were impactful, right? One represented marriage, one represented business or motherhood or whatever your desires and goals are and your priorities. And are you spending time hitting, like if you would have known which 5 they were, you wouldn't have hit any of the other ones on purpose because you wanted to hit those ones. And so it's really knowing what your targets are so that you are hitting them, and that allows all the other ones to kind of fall by the wayside and not feel so important. But if you don't know what the targets are, every single one on that wall felt really important because you weren't sure which one was moving the needle forward.
Yeah, I love that. So with that, what is the most important lesson you've learned, and how have you applied it to strengthen your marriage and move the needle forward in your business?
So I like to just say, don't compare your business, like your motherhood, your marriage, to anyone else's. We all have different results and different desires, right? We all aren't going to hit those same targets. We're going to have different ones, right? Or we're going to decide that one's too high or that one's not what I want. So you might see that person that you really admire that has it all together, and you might think they have the perfect marriage. And let's say they totally do. But guess what? It's perfect for them. Right? It's perfect for the way that they want to run their family and they want to run their entrepreneurship, but it wouldn't be perfect for you. So if you're spending time wishing your marriage or your business looked like someone else's, then you are using time. And I like to say you're wasting time that could be spent making your marriage incredible. So of course I'm human. So there are times that I compare, but when I catch that that's kind of where I'm going down this comparison of other people's businesses and marriages, I like to stop and ask, how do I think they feel in their marriage? Since I think that they have this really awesome or this really incredible marriage, I might think that they feel loved or appreciated or happy or valued or whatever. And then I ask myself, do I feel those things now too? And if not, why? And then I like to say, what can I do to feel those things now? Or what can I start doing to feel that way? Because I think we are often wishful of other people's lives because we think that they're feeling a certain way. So even without having their life or their accomplishments or their marriage or their money, we can still feel that same way about our life that we imagine they're feeling, even though our circumstances are very different. I think that we are often seeking a feeling that we think that would make our marriage perfect, right? If I could just feel and then fill in the blank, then I'll have this perfect marriage. But again, no marriage is perfect. However, we do have the opportunity to feel those feelings daily if we are intentionally thinking about our marriage and our spouse in a way that's really positive, in the way that serves us. So if we are focusing on our spouse, if we're focusing on their faults and weaknesses, or our same, right, our own faults and weaknesses in the marriage, if that's what we're focusing on, then that's what we're going to notice. And then that's the story we're going to start to tell ourselves about our marriage, right? If my spouse would only do, if my spouse would remember to, or if I were better at, or if I was a better wife, right, then my marriage would be. What is that story that you're telling yourselves? Because what you focus on is what thrives. And so that's what I think has been the best advice that I can give people, is just to notice the feelings you think other people are feeling in their marriage and go create those feelings in your marriage, and then stay in your dreams, stay in your marriage, and not someone else's that you're just imagining. If you're going to spend time imagining what someone else's marriage is in, if you're going to spend time imagining at all, imagine your marriage, create this amazing marriage in your mind, and then take those action steps necessary to create that marriage in real life.
Oh my gosh, there's so many great points in what you just said, like so profound. But I was thinking just earlier today, I was talking about this in that I teach marriage for entrepreneurs. And what that looks like is different for everybody. So that comparison that you're talking about, it looks very different for everybody in actual practice, but the principles that get us there, the principles that get us to feel those feelings that we desire, that you're referring to, like you said, it's pretty simple actually. You imagine how you want to feel about your marriage, about the way you are a parent, and about your business, and then you go about creating those actions. And it's, again, like you just said, it's in the story that you tell yourself. So I always teach my students to look for the good, because, you know, your brain is this powerful tool and it will find what you give it to look for. So if you're very focused on where you're falling short and what you're not getting and all of those things, you're going to find evidence of that everywhere. But if you choose to look for the good, to look for how to give your brain good problems and look for, how can I create this feeling in my marriage? How can I create this level of success in my business? You're going to start to find evidence and get answers for that all over the place. I love, there's so much good in what you just said. We could riff on this for hours. I'm certain of it.
We totally can. Yeah. Because our brains just want to be right. And so if we believe that our spouse or us lack in some area, we're just going to keep finding all the ways that we lack. But that might be true, but we also are amazing in other areas. So I like to say, if anything, give it equal airtime. If you're going to go down that road of like, this is how I messed up, or this is how my spouse messed up, then take just the same amount of time to at least say, this is how I did great. This is how my spouse is great. And then eventually, as we start to go down that equal airtime road, we start to notice the good more and more easily, and we let the negatives or those faults slide away.
Yeah, so good. Siri, this has been amazing. Tell us where my listeners can find you and learn more about your coaching.
I am very active over on Instagram. So I'm Organized Life with an ED. So organizedlife.coach. You can also find me at Facebook, Siri Payne Coaching. And then you can check out my website, which is the same as Instagram, organizedlife.coach.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
To learn more ways to deepen your intimacy and strengthen your relationship, make sure you watch this video next on